This is mostly unusual to review a Tom and Jerry episode that's mostly 7 to 8 minutes long, but I'm only doing this mainly the fact that there's so much cartoons that are going to be reviewed for this month, and the fact that I have so much options. I have to completely pick the cartoons that I've watched when I was a little kid, because as far as I'm concerned, the modern cartoons as of now, I'm not really into those. But then again, you probably know that I don't usually keep up with a lot of things. So anyway, Tom and Jerry, there were two episodes that I want to review that is considered bad. And it's going to be from the golden era of Tom and Jerry. One was Child Watchers, where Tom and Jerry have to stop the baby from going all over the place while the babysitter just doesn't even care and just completely stays on the phone. And it was this episode. I decided to pick this episode because I never watched an episode from Tom and Jerry that was this cringe-worthy and this obnoxious to see Tom go through all this abuse and torment. Yes, I did say abuse, because I'm going to get to that at the end once we get to the end of this episode. So, what is the biggest problem with this episode? Nancy, who is the human character in this short, completely made Tom a baby. Yeah. As you can really tell, this actually leads to the majority of what this short is. Tom just constantly get tormented by not only the alley cats, but also Jerry. You know, when I watch Tom and Jerry shorts and they do this type of gimmicks, like having Tom and Jerry go to a different country or just doing sword battles or being cowboys and stuff like that, they at least work out because they didn't make the characters really toned down and get uncalled for punishment. But here, Nancy doesn't even realize that Tom is too big to become a baby, and I honestly think that when she's trying to actually treat Tom as a baby is just downright miserable for Tom. Because no matter what Tom does throughout the majority of this episode, he always gets punished by Nancy. So that's honestly really miserable to actually see Tom go through all this. Mainly the fact that he's a baby and he's too old to become a baby, even if he's a cat. I am actually kind of thankful that watching these episodes again, I can honestly see onto how Tom is completely likable in his own way. And when I was little, I was always sided with Jerry, but apparently, since I got older, I can really see how miserable Tom is throughout this episode. Granted, he is happy that he's able to drink the milk all by himself, but then Jerry comes in, and for anyone who's been watching the Tom and Jerry shorts from the Golden Age, should know that Jerry is really, really likable and how he tries to help the other characters to avoid any kind of situation. He even helped Tom at some points in most of the shorts in the show, but unfortunately, this short itself, it really isn't the case. Believe me, the idea of having Jerry, Butch, and the Alley Cats completely messing with Tom because he's being portrayed as a baby because of Nancy is honestly make this entire episode downright annoying and cruel to actually see Tom go through so much torment from the other characters. Seriously, it's really annoying when you completely see other characters just completely mock Tom because he's in a diaper. And the bits where we see Tom completely chasing Jerry, it's not really as good as the other times they did this before, because unlike in those episodes or shorts, they actually made the plot a lot more entertaining and not this cruel. And not only that, the jokes in here is just really horrendous for all the wrong reasons. Jerry, like I mentioned, isn't what he was in the other episodes. Well, in this episode, in the other episodes, he was likable, but in this episode, he's just completely mocks Tom no matter what, all because he's a baby, and the way he's portrayed, in the way he behaves is just so juvenile that it's just really frustrating to actually see some kind of likability in him in this episode. Believe me when I say this, is that even if this episode came out in the 1940s, technology isn't at its best, because, apparently it was at the middle of the 20th century, and the fact that a lot of laws haven't been changed during that time. But even with that, this episode can still get dated no matter what. And I honestly think that this is the type of stuff that can easily see some different perspective of other people when they look at this episode as a grown adult. Believe me, I really think that even if this episode is really old, 80 years old, almost, maybe, I still think that at this point, I still want to recommend watching it, and just either before watching the other shorts from Tom and Jerry. And like I said, Tom is just instantly get tormented, and it just gets a lot worse where we get to see the alley cats in this. Butch, who is the bad cat, along with the other cats, don't usually do anything whatsoever, and this is the first time we get to see Butch in this. You know, as much as I have mixed opinions and with the other characters in Tom and Jerry, I can really tell you that they will probably not go this far on just humiliating Tom and on the fact that he's a complete baby because of Nancy. Believe me, just seeing his frenemies, which is mainly Butch, just completely mocking him, you can really tell that he's really setting over the edge. But whenever he tries to actually fight off the alley cats, Butch just completely hurt him and just completely mess with him. And I can really tell that most of the comedy in this just really came to the Squid Baby episode from SpongeBob. Don't believe me? Well, look at this. Butch just completely tossed Tom up at the ceiling, similar to what Patrick did with Squidward in the SpongeBob episode. It's honestly really astounding that this episode has considered one of the least watchable episodes from Tom and Jerry had this. I honestly don't even know which one is miserable, on the fact that this episode just isn't easily talked about, or the fact that there were other bad episodes that were worse than this. And this is the golden age still, so Tom and Jerry obviously needs to start somewhere so that they can get some kind of attention from the audience. But at the same time, this episode isn't easily one of them. And then when we completely see the alley cats just changing the Top's diaper, it's really, really stupid, and it doesn't usually do anything other than just completely filling up the episode's runtime to 7 minutes. And not only that, one of the alley cats just completely hit Tom with a hammer. Yeah. That's literally not what people who take care of babies do, even by 1940 standards. And probably never at all. Do I actually really think that this is the type of comedy that is considered hilarious? No, not really whatsoever. I know Tom and Jerry can do different ideals, but when it comes to the golden age, and maybe in the present time, minus the Willy Wonka crossover, but still, this is just something that Tom doesn't deserve, and this episode makes you really cannot stand of how the alley cats and Jerry are just completely treating Tom miserably. And don't even get me started on the song sequence. I don't even care what name it is, because it's so frustrating to get it out of your head that after you watch it for the first time as a child, it becomes really scarring, and it just makes this episode really, really childless and annoying. I'm not trying to be any rude for anyone who would like this song, but this is just really furthering the torment of Tom and just making this episode a lot more frustrating to sit through. And especially that one of the characters, the alley cats, are just dressed up as a woman, which is really childish and juvenile more than when Tom is forced to become a baby because of Nancy. How is any of this considered humorous or entertainment? I get that this was in the 1940s, but at the same time, it could still age really badly. And then when Nancy completely finds out what's been going on with Tom and the Alley Cats, she instantly blames Tom, despite the fact that it was the Alley Cats who completely caused all of this. Yeah, so much for being a proper babysitter. I don't care if she's a child or anything. That doesn't excuse the fact that she's completely unlikable in this episode. And that is saying a lot when it comes to the Alley Cats and Jelly be betrayed in this episode. And the punishment that she gives to Tom for doing something that wasn't entirely his fault, by giving him some castor oil, if that's actually the name of the oil. That's not a punishment that animals deserve. It's actually animal abuse, and I'm being a bit serious. As far as I'm concerned, this type of stuff that happened in the 40s would never happen in the present time, because Jelly completely hurts Tom in order to have him eat the oil, which causes him to throw up. Yeah. That just basically sums up everything onto why it's called animal abuse, when the animals do not like the food. I mean, oil is not even food whatsoever. So the fact that Tom has to eat it and he instantly pukes is honestly miserable to see Tom go through all this torment. But for Jelly, he actually ate the oil accidentally and then throws up, which is actually kind of a karma trip that Jelly actually deserved for being a selfish jerk in this. But other than that, this episode was just miserable and honestly really hard to actually watch when you get older and older. Now, I understand that there are other bad episodes that are worst, that aren't in the golden age of Tom and Jerry, but at the same time, I actually really wanted to actually put my focus on an episode that was really getting on my nerves throughout these years while I get older and older. Granted, I don't watch Tom and Jerry that much, but considering I made reviews of the Willy Wonka the Chocolate Factory movie and the Magic Rain movie, I think it will probably be fair for me to actually return to this cartoon just to review one of the episodes. Granted, I might come back to this show when it comes to reviewing another bad episode if I'm going to do another Cartoon Crisis, but at the same time, I really don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I really think that episodes like this really goes to show that even the golden age of cartoons like Tom and Jerry would never age well no matter what. Especially the fact that you can easily watch the modern episodes of Tom and Jerry way more than this, because even if they don't have the charm like the 1940s, like the golden age had, it still wasn't like anything like this. And if you're gonna think about giving me any requests on reviewing bad episodes of the modern age, I might be interested, but at the same time, it won't happen anytime soon. But as far as I'm concerned, with the choice of reviewing this over Trot Watchers, I really think that this episode is honestly a better choice because it's way worse than that episode. I really feel bad for Tom in this, and I usually do not like Tom anymore when I was a little kid. When I was emo, but I never liked Tom. But when I got older, I guess it really goes to show that you can actually see a lot from the other characters, even in one of the earlier years of cartoon animation. Anyway, I give this episode a 3.25 out of 10. It's a really bad episode, but at the same time, once we get into one of the worst episodes from the other cartoons that we're going to be tackling in Cartoon Crisis 2, this one will probably be in pale in comparison.